Alright guys, so we did the HTML in the last video. We created our UI with the skeleton CSS boilerplate. Very simple. Now what we're going to do is add our JavaScript. So in the app.js file, I'm just going to paste in just the set of, I guess, functions or rules that this game is going to follow and things that we need to do. So players must guess a number between a minimum and a max that we can change within the script. Players they get a certain amount of guesses, which we can define. Notify the player of the guesses remaining. Notify the player of the correct answer if they lose, and then let the player choose to play again. Okay, so these are the main rules of the game. So first thing we'll do is create our variables. So we have game values. Now these I'm actually going to define with let. Okay, now in the past we've done let x equals something, and then we'll do let something equal whatever. But we don't have to keep defining let or const. We can actually put a comma instead of a semicolon, and then just put the next variable on the next line. So for instance, I'm going to set the min equal to 1. Now instead of putting a semicolon and saying let max for the next one, I'm going to put a comma and then just say max equals 10. All right, put another comma, so we can do it this way. Okay, we haven't been doing this, but I'm trying to ease you guys into different conventions and practices. All right, so if you're an experienced JavaScript programmer and you're watching this and you've seen me do things where you're like, why is he doing it that way? It's because I'm trying to start at a certain point. You know, start at a point for beginners, and then work my way up to certain conventions and certain ways of structuring files and things like that. Okay, so it's about teaching. It's not about creating the most optimal code I can right off the bat. So let's continue here. Let's set a winning number. Oh. So winning num. We're going to set that. I'm going to set it to 2 for now, but of course this is going to be random later on. You don't always want the same number. We will create a function that'll generate a random number between the min and the max. Okay, we'll do that later on, but for now it's just going to be 2. All right, and then we want guesses left. Okay, the number of guesses left, which I'm going to initially set to 3. Okay, now we put our semicolon here. So that defined all those variables with let. Now we want our UI elements, which we're going to use const. So we'll say const, and let's get the game wrapper itself. Okay, we have an ID of game around everything. So we want to define a variable called game. And again, a convention that I sometimes use would be UI game. I would say UI before all of these. But again, I want to keep this very generic. So it's up to you if you want to use a different, customized convention for your naming. So let's say document.query select. Actually, it's an ID, so I'll do get element by ID. Game. Let's put a comma here. We can define our next one, which will be the min num. So we'll use query selector here. Now the min num, if we look at our HTML, this is going to be the span right here. Okay, so I want this to be able to reflect whatever our minimum is, and this the max. So the query selector is going to be the class of min-num. Okay, we also want max num. So this will be class of max num. Let's see, we also want the button, the guess button. So let's say guess btn. Change this to the ID of guess button. What is it? I think it's guess-btn. Let me just check that. No, wait a minute. I'm sorry guys, they put guess value here. This should actually be guess btn. Yeah, so we have guess input and guess btn. All right, so let's guess btn. Actually, you know what? Let's just use query selector for all of these. So we'll just throw a hash in here just to be consistent. So guess button. What else do we need? We're going to need the guess input. Actually, let's just copy this down. So guess input be guess dash input. And then we just want our message. Okay, remember we have that paragraph of message. And I believe that's a class. And why do I have a dot here? This isn't right. So this will be dot message, and that's talking about this paragraph right here. All right, so those are the UI elements. Now I want to assign, this should be a semicolon. I want to assign the minimum and maximum here. So whatever we have specified here should show up in the UI. So let's say assign UI min and max, and we can do that by just saying min num dot text content equals, and then we're going to set it to min. Okay, max num dot text content we're going to set to max. So let's save that. Now we can get rid of the 10 and the 1 right here and save, and we still get 1 and 10. If I were to change this variable to 4 and save, now it's between 4 and 10. All right, so it's dynamic. So now what we want to do is create our event listener for this button. So this button has a variable of guess button. So let's go ahead and say, actually we'll put a comment here. We'll say listen for guess, and we'll say guess btn dot add event listener. We want to listen for a click, and then we want to call a function. Let's test this out by just saying console.log, and let's log the guess input. Okay, so it should be whatever is put inside the input. So we'll save that. Let's open up our console. We'll put in 2, submit. Now it's going to give us the actual input, but what we want is the value. So dot value 2, and then we get 2. Now notice how this is black. This means that this is a string, and when we do our comparison and stuff, we need this to be a number. So the first thing we need to do here is parse that as a number. So we're going to wrap that value right there inside of parse int, and we're going to set this to a variable. So I'm going to say let guess equals parse int and then that value. So now we want to validate our input. Okay, so we need a conditional here, and we basically want to check to make sure that it's not blank. We want to make sure that it's not less than the minimum or higher than the maximum. Okay, now since this is wrapped in parse int, let's actually, you know what, let's console log guess to see what it gives us. Okay, so instead of giving us an empty string, this is throwing an error. Let me just get rid of that for a second. So usually we would check for, if guess is equal to empty string, but since we're parsing it as an integer, it should be NaN, not a number. So I submit and we get NaN. So we need to check for that. All right, if I put something in here, a number, we want to make sure that this is in between the range as well. All right, so let's go back to our if statement here, and we're going to say if guess is equal to not a number, so NaN, or guess is less than the minimum, or guess is greater than the max. Okay, so if any of these are true, then we don't want the game to continue. we just want to set a message down here. So we're actually going to create a function called setMessage. Okay, and that's going to take in a message. Now I'm going to put in some backticks here, and we just want to let the user know that they have to enter a number between this range. So we're going to say, please enter a number between, and then we can put our expression syntax in here and say min and max, which are going to refer to these variables right here. All right, so let's go ahead and let's go down here and create that function. That's going to take in a message, and we just want to output it into that paragraph. So remember, that paragraph we put into a variable called message. So we're going to say message.textContent equals, and then whatever the message is. So let's save that and try it. So we'll leave it blank and submit. Okay, so that's not working. Let's try and do a higher number. That works. If we put a lower number, that works. So let's see, it's this equals NaN that isn't working. You know what, let me I'm sorry guys, I had a brain fart here. We can't do this. What we want to do here is we want to use the function isNaN like this. So isNaN and then pass in guess. So let's try that. There we go. All right, so if we put in something that's actually in the range, like 3, let's reload, 3, submit, and we don't get the error. We don't get the message. Now, I want the text to be red. Okay, if it's something, if it's one of these, this is basically an error. So we can set the color by saying message.style.color equals red, right? So now if I submit, it's red. But I also want to use setMessage to show regular messages that are not errors, and I don't want them to be red if it's just a regular message. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an extra parameter to this function called color. Okay, and then we're going to set the color to whatever's passed in, and then we can simply go up here to set message, pass in a second variable or a second value of red. All right, so if we go ahead and submit, now it's red. If I were to change this to green and submit, it's green. All right, so simple fix for that. So let's figure out what we want to do next now that we did the validation. So what we want to do next is check to see if it's the winning number, right? So let's say check if, we'll just say check if 1, and we're going to say if, let's say if the guess is equal to the winning number, and then we'll have an else. All right, so if it's equal to the winning number, then what do we want to do here? So I would say we should disable the input. So that's easy. We'll just take, actually let's put a comment here. We'll say disable input. So we'll say guess input dot disabled equals true. All right, so we know that the winning number is 2. So let's try 4 and submit, and we can still add something else. Let's try 2 and submit, and now I can't enter any number. So that's the first thing. Next thing, let's make the border green to show that they won. So we can do that by taking the input. So guess input dot style dot color. I'm sorry, not color, border color. So border color, we're going to set that to green. All right, so let's try it. we'll put a 2 in, submit, and the border is now green. So now what we want to do is let the user know that they won. So we can call set message, and let's put some backticks in here, and we're going to say we'll put our variable winning number or winning num, and we're going to say is correct. Alright, and then let's set in a second parameter of the color, and we want to make it green. Okay, so it should be a green message. So let's try that out. Let's save. If we put in a 3 or something, nothing happens. We haven't taken care of that yet. But let's put in 2, and we get 2 is correct. We should probably say you win. So we'll say 2 is correct. You win. There we go. Alright. So I think we're going to stop here, guys. In the next video, we're going to handle the situation where they lose. Alright, so we're going to want to subtract from the number of guesses, which is this, our guesses left. And we're going to want to notify them how many guesses they have left, and notify them that the number they entered was wrong. Alright, so I will see you in the next video.